Okay, good evening. Is everyone ready? Hello, Lok Kuang. Hi. You guys are all okay? Okay, if you are all ready, I'll start by introducing myself. I'm Hii Min. We are broadcasting live from Kuching, Sarawak. Just a bit of background about why we're doing this. Earlier this year, we had planned for our local chapter to have our design festival, which had forums, speakers coming into Kuching to speak. We had a trade expo organized. We had site visits organized as well. But due to the current situation, we've had to change this to an online format. So in August, we decided to have the same speakers come on to share, but not to lose out on the trade show and the site visits. We are actually combining all the three events into one. So today, we have our speakers speak, we have our trade partners present their videos and things. And we also have a site visit because at the end of our Q&A, our speaker is going to take us on a tour of, today is his house. This is the first time we're doing it, and this is the first time that Lok Kuang is doing it as well. So
exactly. Yep.
If there are any cock-ups, please send in your comments on how to improve it, and we will improve it next Friday. Just also to let people who do not know, we are having this 5 at 5. It's 5 lectures on 5 consecutive Fridays in October. Okay, so Lok Kuang is our first guinea pig. And together with him on the screen, you'll see his fellow Kedahan, Mei Chee Seong from Penang. He's going to be my guest moderator, and he'll be helping me field questions and post them to Lok Kuang. Okay, so if everyone is ready, we'll let Mr. Wooi Lok Kuang, who needs little or no introduction, so I'm not going to bother introducing him. But today he's going to use his projects to talk to us about the architecture of place. Okay, welcome, Lok Kuang.
Okay, so I'll take over here. Huh? All right, first, Min, thanks very much for inviting me to speak to all of you. And also, I must congratulate PAM Sarawak chapter. I can see that you all never be defeated by anything, not even COVID. We still carry on, but we're carrying on online. Now, what I'm going to talk about, I find that I'm going to talk about it in a way it's quite casual manner, because I was told that you'll be student and a professional practitioner or whatever. So I'm not going to bore you with a lot of projects, but I would just bring out the project or the houses that I do, just to illustrate some point in relation to the topic today. A topic that I'm talking about, I call it romancing the equatorial. So I think romancing the equatorial, pretty much, I think the word, actually this came about after I did a Thing's House. And then there's this writer, I don't know where she is now, but she wrote this, and I find that, wow, she sort of summarized a lot of things that I'm trying to do in a very good way. But he was quoting this a philosopher, a German philosopher, don't bother to pronounce the name, but he said to romanticize the world is to make us aware of the magic. That's how he described Thing's House, that as if something is really unusual. And then mystery, wonder of the world, it is to educate the senses, to see the ordinary as extraordinary, the familiar as strange, the mundane as sacred, the finite as infinite. So I find that actually that's very interesting. It's sort of like very much aligned with what my thinking about, that I carry with me from my childhood. I mean, we always see something ordinary, and then we just cannot settle for that the fact is ordinary. Like if we see a spider, sometimes when we are young, we don't have iPhone, we pretend the spider is an astronaut, with a string attached to him, and then come out from the matchbox or something like that. Matchbox is a spaceship. So somehow the ordinary thing, that through imagination, it take on a new level of existence. Of course, these are all imagination. Then I had some thought about this when about the topic of the day, and then try to go back and why did I actually, I didn't start with the point talking about the sense of place. I know as student, lecturer, and all those, you know, those are words that they use, sense of place or genius loci, spirit of the place, or what have you. But just to sort of reverse engineering a bit, like sort of where does it come from? And I find that for me, I would associate the sense of place with memory. And a large part of it, I think, from childhood. I mean, you remember things that actually either food or a place is with memory. I think a lot of the time, I think for me, is very much from the childhood. And the other thing is, I think, it's definitely an outcome of a creative act. To me, it's a work of art. Now, I'm not going to go into what art means, it's such a wide topic, but it's enough to say that it's actually introduced something that when you experience it, it sort of gives you a new way of looking at things. It sort of like change your being a little bit. You become somebody more, I would say more knowledgeable, but you will see things differently after you experience it. And I think the sense of place definitely is delightful. It's not just about a building, a space, you know, like the famous dictum that all architects would know, like all architecture is defined as a place where it's, you know, is functional, and it has to be firm, I mean firmness, utilitarian, and then the third one is delightful. I think we know this, but it's very much a delightful place. But then again, what is delightful? Is it something subjective or objective? And in my mind, it is in a way objective, because I find that as long as that place actually it relates to where we are and who we are. By who we are, I mean our culture. Like if I were to go to Sarawak, for example, I would say that a lot of places that I never experienced, but I love it. Like for example, take the hiking in Santubong. It's a tough journey, but definitely it's something that, you know, the landscape, the way people doing things, the people that you meet, they're all very different. So to me, that's who we are, that we reckon with our own habit, our idiosyncrasy, and everything. And also where we are. And where we are, I suppose, here I'm referring to context. And most immediate things that we would know is the climate. I think the very hot and sometimes unfriendly or what have you. But nevertheless, we've been growing up in this context like that. And then I think that to me, I think associated with sense of place. And also a sense of belonging. And the word belonging is very interesting. I mean, you want to belong there. I mean, you don't mind staying there for hours, and then you really enjoy the place. And last, not last, second last, I think it's a peculiarity and also particularity. There's something particular about the place that you don't get it elsewhere. And you can call it a sense of identity or whatever, but it's something that we picked up if you know, that you don't see it elsewhere, and then peculiar, something like peculiar and not necessarily in a strange way. And lastly, I think is how it connects with nature. Right? So these will be things that on the houses that I'm going to show you, hopefully it will illustrate my preoccupation of this architecture as a place or a sense of place created in the houses. And I think, again, we being the main person or the agency that actually bring the sense of place to existence. I think we are probably, to me, I just came from Utah's critic. I find that from student until you practice, I think forever we will be very confused of who we are as architects. And a lot of the time, I think the modern, to me, I blame it on modern way of looking at things. Like, you know, architects, basically, we're supposed to think about design, draw design, but we don't build the design. Somebody else built, the builder built it. And the builder might be a group of craftsmen or whatever, but they are not allowed to think, basically. They have to follow the plan given by the architect. And that, if you watch a little bit or read a little bit more, it came back from even Alberti, right? But this is why I think if we go back to the original meaning, it sort of would sort of like get us to think a bit more what architecture is, you know. And then this one is actually a Greek definition, you know, from the Greek, very old, I suppose. And then it said it's actually architect supposed to be the chief or the first tecton. And this is to say they are the carpenter, the first roofer, the principal roofer, and initial constructor. That means you start something, you build it. And of course, tecton is a Greek word meaning one who work with your hands, right? Familiar? This is actually, now we see mainly a craftsman. And the second word, like the things that architects deal with immediately is technology. It change all the time, either software or hardware. But the technology doesn't mean machine or anything like that, but it's actually the original meaning from technique means to reveal the potential of the material, right? So like, give you an example is that you have a sculpture from, let's say, Terengganu or whatever, or from Bali or whatever. The piece of furniture, you can see the wood the craftsman chose and how the grain work and how this thing, you can see the love and care that they put in. As compared, let's say, a piece of furniture from IKEA, for example. IKEA probably will look at a spruce or pine and try to cut it as many pieces as possible. It's utilitarian. So it doesn't matter what is the potential of the wood, but as long as I can get so many out of it. So I think technique is understood as something to review. And if we remind ourselves of that, for me, I remind myself that, then we will use the material quite judiciously and quite cautiously. And lastly, I think also associate with the word poiesis. And what it means is that when we are bringing something new to the existence. And to me, that hold a lot of value in my work. What it means is that I would want to have work that actually might have a certain similarity, but every new work, I want to push the edge, to bring out something new, something challenge myself, and not only challenge myself, but also people, what you call the people that experience it generally. And then look at these three illustrations, mainly you can see, and then when we measure ourselves, it's no longer just measurement, but it's all, we have metric handbook. But in the olden day, in the Malay way of doing things, they call it tepah, jengkal and all that. It's all directly related to human body. And so to jengkal is probably 9 inches or 230 mm. But actually everything is different. And then what's more interesting is that the measure of the house, like a tiang seri, is actually measured on tepah. And then normally refer to the mother of the house. So a lot of this thing is that it has a very direct relationship to our body measurement. And this is a result a lot of the time that it become a reference always that because of the tool that they use by hand, it tend to be very intimate. Everything that they do, the change of this thing, how they finish off the wood, everything are very well thought out and considered. So I won't go through too much of this, but essentially, I think in our own tradition, a lot of the time that we, as a modern architect, we tend to cut ourselves from the past. But this passage from Ong Lo Meng is basically remind us that sometimes we cut an old text is better than creating a new one. And the other one that actually would keep me honest in some way is that the authenticity that in the house that I grew up with, of course, is all gone. So that's why this sketch that I did quite a few years ago, it shows that the living is very simple. The front is take on like downstairs is where you do the business, and then upstairs is where you sleep, and then you provide the bus stop for people to stay, to sit and wait for the bus. And then the back you take on a different way. The mother will be cooking, the neighbor will bring the food to give to the neighbor, and then the neighbor might reciprocate, and then also the chicken, the rare and things like that. And in the COVID age, I think we probably should be thinking this, so we don't have to fight to buy eggs and things like that during the lockdown. Then the other equatorial consideration, I think we are, in my view, we are, as architects, we sort of like, we draw ourselves into I would say two categories. One is that we were mechanical. Almost all houses will be like aircon and like to have a natural ventilated space is almost very hard for you to convince the client and all that. But that impact on the architecture outlook as well. The whole thing will look very boxy. You don't need any terraces because your house could be hermetically sealed. You know, it can be a boxes, but and things like you can actually ignore the weather outside. You can cut it off. But I feel that this passage again is very interesting, and the other aspect is that we have feng shui, which is a lot of the time so commercialized that it doesn't mean anything already. But this passage that I come across, which I find very interesting, and then you're talking about this poet living more than 1,200 years ago. His name is Po Chu Yi, or in Mandarin we probably call it Bai Ji Yi, right? Now this one is, when you quickly read through the passage, is that how he actually built his house, his hut, right? And then this is when he was like very much exiled from the emperor, right? So he said, I put my door on the north side to let the cool breezes, so to fence off the oppressive heat. I made the southern rafter high to admit the sunlight in case there should be times of severe cold. And the beam were trimmed off, left unpainted. The wall unplastered, are plastered, but not given the final coat of paint. Now, you see why it's facing south? Because of, China is in the northern hemisphere, so the winter sun will come in from the south. So the other one is that you want to emit the breeze from the north. So my point is that he actually lived with nature, and he understands the realistic, the normal phenomena of daily life. So he didn't look at feng shui, or you never find any feng shui book during Tang Dynasty. But these are the inert understanding, either by necessity or whatever, that they understand the place very well. Now I start with my house. I just run through this. It's basically my house. I think the key point I want to point out is actually the material that I choose, and also the design of it. Again, I veer off from the normal rectilinear because I find I should be back to the hill at the back. I won't go into detail, as I will be going to take you through a virtual tour later. But a point about the material is that the brick actually comes from very close by. But it's a wooden kiln, common brick. It's a very cheap, 45 cents. But maybe I'm using it too much now. The price has gone up a lot. And then all the wood, I use a different type of timber. But I refer to the Malay houses, like they use this main tiang seri. I use cengau. The rest I use yellow balau and resak, which is a more common wood. So it is a pragmatic, a sensible way of using timber, rather than you see a lot of those houses that even the building in Putrajaya, they just use all cengau. And in the past, I think in Malay community, cengau is considered raja kayu, so they will use it sparingly. And I'll just run through it. And then the other point is that the honesty in construction is during our student day. Until now, I still carry it through. That whatever I use, I'm not going to use it as decoration. That they would, when I can help it. This one is a ceiling that they put up, and then you will see the ceiling from below, right? Which I'm going to show it to you since when it's completed. And you see the ceiling right from below, but it's also a support for the roof covering. Now then I proceeded with Lee resident, for example. Then in this one is probably the narrative is more on like, I like to create the relationship of this to the view outside. I want to create two drums. I restricted them on 2 floors, so they don't see the view, because sometimes the view become powerful when you limit it. So the view is gradually revealed to them as they go up, right? But in a nutshell, again, I use a similar material like timber here, and because it's exposed to the sun, I use cengau in this case, and actually it becomes like a 2 drum. Above is actually the dining and guest room. Below there is a separate suite for the 2 children, and it's also screened off our tropical sun. And on another type of like more low, what you call the building where I can afford a bit more land, and then I have clients that actually supported the idea. I create a more like courtyard configuration, and in this case, it's actually he's a Sarawakian from Barrio, a Kelabit, but he's very successful in his own way. But he got this land which is one size higher than the other. And then this particular end, we created a study, and now it's his son's studio. And then the one end will be double story high, but the short of the story is that he sort of go along with the idea. First, he want to level the land and say no, and then I create something that make use of the slope. And what I want to focus on perhaps is his main space is called the living space. That he spent a lot of time there. And again, this is very interesting. I think it's when, as an architect, that we take what you call the trouble to really understand the client's needs. Like he loves jamming with the children. So it's not a typical living hall that I'm going to give him. It's probably look more like something else. And this is from the street. So pretty much the study, you can't see much. And then I also purposely sort of turn the back of the building. The house will turn its back on the street because I find that in Malaysia, I think one of the things that we can improve, which I find very difficult, is that actually those guarded and gated property, everyone just like showcasing the house, and then there's no more dialogue between the houses so much. So I create an internal looking configuration that I showed you earlier. But like what I said, I'm going to focus on the main space. And this particular house, I actually use material like this. In this case, is nyatok. Again, it's a local softwood. But the point is that it is well shaded, so that, and then have a large opening that they can open up, and then with a lot of places that they can open up to have a natural ventilation. And okay, there's a note coming up now. Okay, then when it's completed, it is like this, and then when it is in action, it's pretty much like a bar. You know, when he organized some gathering, when I was invited, it's pretty much transformed itself. It's almost like you're more in like a pub than in a living hall. And many places will be like creating this overhanging space, the place with the large overhanging roof relating to the what you call to the golf course at the back. And other houses like King House, I won't talk about the house so much, but more on the selection of material. In a way that I think I like the material to age naturally. I generally shy away from commercial material. Like this house is completed like 11 years ago, and this is quite a recent picture. You can see the trees growing, and the patina or the wood sort of aged to be quite gracefully. And this another things about these particular things is that all this rock actually we recover from the side, and then we put back and make into tiles and make into the wall. And when I'm given a smaller site, I like to manipulate the sunlight. I feel that this is one way of, like, our tropical sun is very unusual. And like this house is, I call it house 9. Basically, it is a small land, relatively. So I create like a forecourt there, and then when they are going in, I cut the diagonally, the circulation like diagonally across, so that the space would look bigger than it is. So this is on the first floor. So because the slit on the top, because in our tropical sunlight, general rule is that you don't want to have a glass roof over. But in this particular case, because it's so small, so I like to create the sunlight that lit up the internal street. And at night, actually, you can even see, almost I see a star, you know, from below. And the play of shadow. Right? This is a balcony outside, internal balcony outside the sun's room. And again, the other thing was that I like the idea of column in the space, which I discovered that somehow make the space occupied, feel occupied even though when it's empty. And then make the seat out of it like more humanized. I mean, a lot of incidental space that you can sit to either play with your phone or whatever. And this is like what I mean by the internal sunlight. It's very important. Like the daughter might be playing piano in the music area, and when they look out, it's to the sunlight area. I think I'm running short of time, so I'm going to just quickly rush through this. And another way is that sometimes you have a client that actually prefer a more clean look, and then they want a modern look, so-called modern look, which is I would question them all the time. So, but this one is that when you have expression like that, and then you're facing west. So I create a screen that facing west to cut the sunlight from the outside to filter off. So the trick is that to make sure it looks opaque from the outside and quite transparent on the inside. Then the next one is that also the fact that it is a central space, right? That I find that it's more like a courtyard that what do you call become the central activity. Again, a lot of the time, I think in creating a place or space for the client, a lot of a conversation will center around, and not so much center around, but you probably try to show them that having external outdoor is actually very important. And then it so happened that this particular house, the client loved outdoor activity. And internally, I always create, in this particular case, a tall space so that there's a natural air convection within the house. And a large opening, where you can see like the large opening, you also have a louver within it. So when it is closed, you also still can open it to allow the air to move right through. And then outdoor, this is where a lot of activity happening. And it become a space that, to me, this is almost like essence of tropics. And then I reintroduce a tall bulai tree at the center from, actually we transport it all the way from Moa, from his hometown. So in the midday, even in the midday, this is the mellow atmosphere that I think, to me, it typifies tropical spaces. And then he bought the land next door. He already had the land next door. And it's a bit of a side story. He actually wanted to build a car park without my knowledge. And later on, I found out. And the good thing is that his original house won a PAM award in 2018. So I said, of course, you can build a shed to house your car or whatever. But I also know at that time, being the wife from Sarawak, I always have guests or friends coming from Sarawak. So I said, why don't you make it into a guest house? And after a bit of a conversation, I think he agreed. So this is like a contemporary version of a Malay house. So this is what you see, these perforated sheets is basically to give additional privacy and screen off a bit of sun, but behind it is a full height glass pivoted door that you can open to allow air to move right through. And below there is where he keeps some of his prized car. And I create the walkway pretty much like a gathering space. And sometimes they might have a lot of people coming in. So the step becomes a sitting area as well, that way where they can sit and enjoy the view at the back. And because we are facing the golf course, even the stairs, we're making the perforated thing. The whole idea about this house is to create certain lightness, and with that relate directly to the nature. Even the track that you see below there, so that the three large sliding door can just pull out. So it's pretty much remove all boundary from you and nature. And sometimes I go to the site. This is what I like to see. Like, you always can plan whatever you want to plan, but the honest verdict will come from the worker where they hang out. So I look at them, they hang out at a place that they're supposed to hang out. That's good. So, but this is again, but this image probably will give you an idea of the likeness that I was talking about. And this is the next one is Barrel Visitor Center. That I love this opportunity very much because it's very unusual. Again, I think Sarawakian are very enterprising. Actually, the owner is actually come from Cebu. And he had many exhibition centers, so I told him that, you should try something different. And he also a very, I think he's a very good guy in the sense that he look at because the person who, most of the people who come here are students from all over, eventually from all over Malaysia. And they used to have to sit outside the pavement quite hot and all that. So I think you create a totally different space. So this space is, in a nutshell, above there is supposed to be a guided tour where you can look through how the chocolate is produced. And this plan is a ground floor plan. In front, I have a bit of a cafe and a bit of a retail area. And I basically created, I thought, a space that where If I were, I had to pretend that I was a child again, but I would come in and what I want to see. And I use this steel that we normally use for reinforcement, right? And some are BRC, and they create this. So I noticed that when the the children are some people that you can't really control, right? And so I will create the transparency in such a way wherever they run, they can't really hide, right? And then there's again with the tall glass, a lot of light coming in. I have to devise a place a way to filter the sunlight. In this case, I just use BRC. Because a commercial project, they don't have a generous a budget like a bungalow. And I use just Meranti to filter the light. And so we create a interesting, somehow look like chocolate boxes, some people say. And I create slit of light again from the top. So that when they come in, it becomes a large space, and then a many group of students. Actually, I planned for only 10, but before COVID, it's sometimes even like for 40 buses or so in the day, which is beyond what we designed for. And then you see the wall down below there. This is what I create, a perforated wall so that they can catch glimpses. And because I know, for me, if I'm with children, if they ask me to sit still, I won't. So I think you let them look at it. And then I create some higher place and then a curved wall, like large skirting like that, so that they don't sort of occupy the place for too long and let other people have a go. And then the slit from the light on top is very interesting. You always see this young boy that try to play a wayang kulit, while they're waiting. And this is the last house that I will quickly go through. This house is called Hii Min House, or actually it's supposed to pronounce it Hii Min House. It's right next to the forest. And for me, this is a very rare site because two things. One is a very large house, and then it has a good reason for it. It's like multi-generation house. And all his brother and sister actually staying right next to him. So the house is big, but it's the fact that it's next to the forest. The immediate thing I want is that to let the forest sort of like invade or intrude into the house a bit. So on the front is actually a gymnasium. It's a very sporty family, and then they have a large hall that all the brother and sister would gather here 1 or twice a week. And then I create a very forbidding front because it's fronting the road. And then we are not allowed fencing on the front. And on the left, it's actually towards the east, we start to open up. Then this area is basically by a series of columns, the random API column to support the area here. And there's a section. And I think this sketch that I give to the landscape, because I did everything, even the landscape, I choose a tree and all that. They actually maybe summarize what this house is all about. It's about the tree, the green, comes smack right in the middle of the house, and even on the side, so that they can relate to the forest next to it. The other thing was in the central courtyard like that, it acts as a buffer. They give privacy for the space that's surrounding it, but at the same time, it's also allowed connection from one space to another, which I try to illustrate later. So this is a good picture to show you that this is actually from the yoga room, and these are the trees that we planted on the inside, and eventually it sort of relate, the foliage sort of like flowing into the space in the middle. And this is the drone view. And on the first floor, pretty much they're exposed to the lake, Bukit Raja. And up front is pretty much on the outside, a very forbidding look. And some people relate it to Tulo. I assure you, it's not the idea come from there. And on the inside, that forbidding look, it take on a more friendly, and then sort of relate to through a large window, and relate to the central garden. And this young guy, he is a Sabahan. He's the one responsible for all this nice picture. His name is Lauren. And you see, that is a nice picture. Again, I'm trying to say is that the opening, like this slide, I purposely let it in a bit. You can slide out to let the air move right through. Again, a lot of the time, the client that they are getting used to aircon, you must always make sure you give option to enjoy our tropical climate. Like now with COVID, it's very good in the sense that, you know, all the school like in Singapore opening up, the first thing they do, they shut down all the aircon. Because aircon is actually not so good for in a COVID situation. So you're looking across from the dining, what you call the gym, you actually see this, what do you call the dining area. And this is what I meant by you can see across and it creates a sense of intimacy, but at the same time, it acts as a buffer between spaces. This from the outside, looking from the dining towards that central space that I call it the oval hall, that a lot of social and family gathering there. And this is looking out, I'm just standing there to give you the scale, sense of scale. The other side is actually lower, but essentially it's a space that, you know, to really celebrate the gathering. I find that the oval shape, why oval shape? I don't want it to be circle, but I think that it should have a direction. The one towards the central garden, the other one's toward the external wall. It's an external space. Looking back, again, I think the tropic is about this interstitial space that in between. I think it's what defines it. And this is also the part that is hard for the architects to convince the client, unless you show them what you have done. Right? Generally, they prefer to close off and use aircon. And COVID gives us a very good excuse, by the way. Good reason, sorry, not excuse. And I think this is what it is supposed to be. So this is the last, one of the last slide that actually looking towards the back, the east one that I was talking about opening up, you know. And all this vertical pipe is actually relate very well to the tree trunk on the outside. And this is the last slide that, from outside looking in. So I know it's a bit of a rush, but anyway, I think you probably get the idea. That's all, and thank you, and back to you, Min.
Need to turn it. Thank you very much. Okay, so for the audience, right, just before you guys zip off, there is a virtual tour at the end, you know. Maybe for those of you who don't quite understand what we're trying to do, we get Lok Kuang to exit the stage and he's gonna go for a walkabout. He's gonna bring his handphone. He's gonna give us a tour of his house. So even during that time when you want to ask questions about materials, cost, difficulty in assembly, things like that, feel free to ask and I'll post them to him. We'll start the Q&A session with a question from Chee Seong, please.
Hi, everyone, good afternoon. Yes, I only know that Lok Kuang is also a Kedahan. Thanks for your, and me too. Yeah, actually, thanks for your inspiring sharing. You remind me a lot about my childhood nostalgic as well. Those images and those memory from the kampong and those knowledge from a kampong. I think that is something very important. And before I throw a question to you, let me have a minute to just summarize up of what my feeling is throughout the whole sharing. Actually, to me, you tell me that actually architects is not the one who creating the building or the object, but actually it's pretty much of curating. Actually, you are curating all the materials and you are curating the experience and you are framing a very poetic sense of visions as well as the feeling and the user experience. So I think that is very important and very inspiring to me throughout the sharing. And the question I want to throw it to you is actually related to what you have been showed us just now. Actually, you show us your house as well as other people's house. So I think I'm pretty much interested to know what is the difference when you design your house and how much is the engagement compared with your design for somebody else. So I think that is something very interesting, and how you manipulate the materials to fit your purpose. And because your house, if this is your house, you have a strong feeling of what you want and what you don't want. But whereas for your client, you need to communicate with them and you need to understand more than what they said, what they talk to you. So what is the difference among these two, and what is the interesting part of the differences of these two types of architecture, so-called.
Oh, okay. Actually, I just gave a talk about the Hii Min house, the last one. But I think the reason I mentioned that is that, you see, there's one quote that I put it up there that I find is very, very true. You see, our architect's job is not to give the client what he wants, but give him something that he never dreamt that he wanted. And once it is done, you realize that this is what he wants all the time. That's from, I mean, I paraphrase it a bit, but it's actually is that. But to answer what you're saying and try to respond to that is that I actually take every of my bungalow very, very seriously. I interview the client, not just the client and not just the payer. In fact, I place more attention to the wife, which I call the home minister, than the husband. My earlier mistake in my earlier house is that I thought, you focus on the guy who's going to commission you, basically, right? And then the other thing was the children. Even as young as, you see how well they express themselves. And I take a very serious interest and really listen to them. And the most recent one is this COVID thing. Is the client, the daughter was asking, is there one house, a room that I can, a magical world, like Narnia, like going in and something like that. It's very interesting. But I to answer your question, for my house, of course I can tell you I'm a poor architect still. I mean, you might not believe it, but it's a poor architect. But I will be more cautious about what I spend, right? And it's got a hip pocket nerve, right? But with the client, and then I like, for example, the Hii Min house again, I refer to that. It's like, I consider him more like a patron, right? Like an artist that you in the olden day, they really give you a free hand. So a lot of detail actually evolved from the site. And I tell him why. And then it's not like as if he give me a blank check, no. And then like I create certain feature like the box and things like that. I tell him no. I say I can't tell you, even with the drone, that it's going to capture this view. The box, they call it iconic seat in the last talk that I did. But the whole idea was that I think with the client, generally the client that I attract now is probably the one that would be that sort of a nature. And then I would tell them from day one. And then they would have a very high level of trust with me before they engage me. That, you're going to get something different and something going to change in between, because I'm going to experiment. You're not a guinea pig because I'm not a young hand. I'm an old hand to handle all this. Like what I said, like a project. You can plan the catapult to shoot, where it land you will never know. But the joy for me is actually that you don't know. Over a child in Kampong Kedah, we go to the paddy field to catch the fish. We don't know what we're going to end up with fish or not. Right? See some bubble, there's a sign, then you end up snake, and then you run away, leeches on your leg. You go home, your mother chewed you. All this you don't know, right? But that's part of the joy. So I sort of this from childhood, this is what I do. So I carry it to architecture. You can't take a kampong out of a map.
Okay.
I think I can see the continuity
let the
of...
Serakian interrupt the...
Yep, go ahead.
Sorry, let the Serakian interrupt the Kedah a minute. I have a question here from a member of the audience. They ask, you're well known for your refined and well executed houses, and I'm sure you've been invited to more of them.
I can't hear you, Min. Actually, I can't hear you very clearly. I can't hear you, Min. You're breaking up.
Okay, I'll repeat the question. I'll repeat the question. The audience, the member from the audience said you're very well known for your well executed and refined houses, and you've won awards for them. And she wonders whether you've had the opportunity to do, or she's sure that you've had opportunity to do buildings of a different nature and size. Is there a reason why we haven't seen them?
Okay, and you're talking about, understanding correctly, is that like why I'm not doing building other typology, right? Actually, like for example, barrels. The
That's
barrels one is probably my first chance. A lot of the time, you see, even the client that commission me might be very generous with me with their houses and things like that. But when with their own projects, right, they will never consider me because they find that I'm too expensive. So, and then I also don't want to do a 44-story condominium, which I was offered. The fees is less than a bungalow. So is it? So it's by choice, and then I don't want to be overstressed as well, unless it's a flagship thing, unless it is, because I really get involved. I really do my best for any of these things. Barrow one is interesting enough to say that he's like a very distinct, very exposed or whatever, but he enjoys design and things like that. And then if it's not for COVID, I might be doing a few other things for him outside the bungalow one. But it is, I would say, it's by default. I'm not going to compromise my craft or my skill just because I want to do the particular building. Like for example, I did try for factory. Like some factory, if it's overseas one, I think they're probably more generous. But you have clients that actually don't care about the design. They just want to quickly build it and then sell it or rent it. So I would prefer not to touch if I can't have the control or can't have the playing field. Right?
Okay, so it's about focusing on your expertise. Maybe I continue with another question before we go back to Chee Seong. You're now actively involved in architectural education, and it's clear that you are mentoring young architects. So I wonder, when you design, do you consciously evaluate and censure yourself in terms of your design pedagogy? Do you speak to yourself when you are doing a detail? How can this communicate a particular idea to not just your clients, but perhaps someone like a young architect who's looking at your work without you there?
I don't think like that. I don't think like that. I actually find that pedagogy-wise, I find that mentoring and a way of helping the students. There are two ways about it. I find that mentor might not work when, let's say, there's a name architect outside. And then like I experienced that. In fact, I won't mention like that, it's a top university. Then they become like adjunct professor there, and then they become mentor. But all the student work somehow turn out to be like theirs, right? So I take a very conscious decision. Whenever I walk into the university, I left my architect hat outside. And then I take a very conscious effort to understand what the student is on about, what the ground rule that he's trying to achieve. And it's about him, not about me. So when I'm doing my own work, I'm doing my work. So I see architecture as something quite personal. And then it's like, well, when I finish a building, I think it becomes an autonomous thing in itself, meaning anyone can interpret. They can take a different things away from the house, and I cannot control. Like think resident, I always make sure that the writer have a freedom. I don't want to know. I just want to read it, and then maybe I can learn something. And then sometimes this is something that I believe and I practice. I don't have that conscious thing that I want to communicate with the student. No, I would say that I'm dealing with something that I want to do in front of me.
Okay.
I want to do the best I can, and whatever resultant of it is a result of it.
Okay, perhaps you don't, but I can see and I can tell you that many of the elements in your buildings, they do teach, they do convey a message, whether it's about structure or space or connections or history. They do. It's good to know that you do it unconsciously. But
yeah,
it is there.
it's consciously, unconsciously.
Well, he does it without intuitively, I should say. Sorry. Chee Seong, you have a question?
Yeah. Actually, it's quite interesting of knowing that your level of involvement in every architectural project is actually very deep, which is, I think, not the typical way of handling architecture commercially, I would say.
No.
So I would like to ask about how you manage your relationship with your client. Because to me, I find that most of your client is actually your friends, and you know them in person rather than as a client, as only. So, and then secondly is that actually in the process of design, I see that you always inspired and have a lot of impromptu or on the side type of inspirations, and you might want to change it from one time to another, and probably you are the one who initiate the change rather than the client. So how you manage this, and I believe there's a lot of trust in between you and your client, and even the trust, or if there's no trust, there must be a lot of argument, and how you manage this, which is out of our contract and out of our norm. I think that's quite interesting to know.
Well, that's a very good question. Okay, I think the last question first, right? It's very true. I think the trust level, that's why I call them patron. And in fact, you can say I bothered them at the end of the day. So now, look, you're a patron, you're not a client. You must know that. Like I tell you, the greatest compliment I got from this Ian House client, and now I'll be doing his house. But how I came to him is basically he Google search. He's one of his workers Google search, a multi-award-winning architect or whatever nonsense. And then that get my foot in the door, right? And then actually they don't care about your award after you get into the door. They're only interested in the house that we're going to do for him, right? But it's from there that it develop a friendship, right? But I think also being who we are, and the value that probably I see who I am, I don't grovel to them, you know. Like I'll be doing another thing for him now also, right? So it's a relationship sort of continuous. And then he tell a very powerful politician, I won't mention the name, Hokkien also from Perak, and then he said, hey, you speak in Hokkien, he said, it's an architect. He go to where? He design there one. What it means is that, you know, I keep changing. So he's actually more scared of changes than me. So there's an interesting part. But why he allowed that to happen? And the other best compliment he gave was that he tell the father, he said, oh, this architect is very difficult, but actually he use Hokkien wala, KL lah, you know. I won't tell the Kuai, whatever lah, you know what I'm saying. So he said, never listen to me. A good thing he never listened to me. Otherwise the house won't end up with this. I said, can I record it or not? I said, that's the best. You know, it's not like a complaint, but it's actually a compliment in a way that had I listened to him, I think I probably won't achieve what I'm trying to achieve. I'm not saying that it's a great house and all and be all, but it's also parametric, you know. He's experiment with it in many, many ways. Roof like that is crazy. And it actually throw the feng shui out of the window. You know feng shui what? The 9, this thing you cannot have one side different or whatever. So it is many layers of conversation and argument. And then we become good friends because I challenge him. And then he's a big time developer. And then, but interesting enough, when he comes to a commercial job, he never come to me. And then he say, you're an artist, I don't want my staff to give you hard time, and then later we cannot become friends. I said, nonsense. I said, your flagship one should try me. Anyway.
Okay. I have a last question for Lok Kuang. It's from a young architect in Kuching. His question is very simple. He simply wants to know, how do you begin your design process? Oh,
that is very interesting. But I think I have a general same process. I insist that I must see the client, right? To me, program is very important. But the most thing that inspires me most of the time is the site. So I must go to the site repeatedly and then talk to the client in a very detail, challenging them. And I always I experiment. I interview. I don't interview them in group. I interview them separately. So the son or the daughter can tell me things that they don't tell their parents. But of course, I tell them I can't promise anything. But what it means is that only recently one that the client was so surprised that, and then at the end of the day, I said, I'm not capo, you know. I'm not interested in your life actually. I said, I'm very selfish. What you do outside the house, I don't want to know. What you do inside, I want to know. Then later on, he knew I want to find pattern of his life. Right? And then a lot of parents, they have blind spot with their children. Wife have blind spot of the husband. And then as architect, when we put that together, you will notice that when we internalize it, we come out with something. They see the value. Wow, it's like that. So that is a secret. In fact, they should pay me $1 million for that. Because that's what I do. And then I think it works most of the time.
Okay, thank you. We'll have to call an end to this lecture and Q&A session. And we're going to have a word from our sponsors while Lok Kuang runs off to where his starting point is. When the video, it's called exiting stage left, I think, or something.
I should leave now, no? I should leave now? Or should I keep it mute? I keep it mute, lah.
No, the video is for you to leave now. You got 1 minute to get to where you want to start. Quick, go. Okay, a word from our sponsors, guys. Stay tuned.
Metal. Introducing iMetal. We make metal roofing with a renewed and innovative approach. Without compromising functionality, style and quality. Optimum satisfaction is always guaranteed with us at iMetal. Working with only the best, we partnered up with Color Coil, Alchem, Ampolite, Decra Roof and PED Steel. Because we care and want the best for your roofing and exterior and interior needs. focusing on roll forming of our metal roofs, ceilings, wall claddings and louvers. Together with our innovative design and fabrication of our lightweight trusses and mild steel structure, we started producing facades as well. Old in old, we innovate and we adapt, no matter the design. Together we grow for you, and with you. iMetal, construction of your dreams.
I somehow cannot get into the audio.
We can hear you.
The host, can you hear me?
There
Oh,
you
okay.
go. Okay, right.
All right. I have to turn this around, right?
That's right, yes.
Okay. Okay, you see?
Yeah.
All right, should I start now? So actually, I'm in the
Please, go
entrance
ahead.
of the house. All right. I'm at the entrance of the house. I'm going to start, yeah? So as you walk along here, it's actually this land is actually about level with the land with the road here, but it's set down another 10 feet below, as you can see from here. And what you see here is actually my new extension. That if I have time, I will go there. If not, then never mind. Up a bit of a few steps here, which will bring you the park at the back, right? So this is what I call like borrowing the view, lah. So it's managed by MBSA. So I enjoy the park, lah, you know, so to speak, lah. So the entry is actually hidden here. So the front door. Oh my goodness! I probably have the other. Now just now was entry, but now if you go down below, it's actually my studio area. My studio area, step. And there's also interconnecting steps here that actually I can go up to my living floor. So there's a front door. That actually just now we were here. Then if we were to walk in, the front door is over here. Then the first part that you enter is actually your living area here. And if I turn right, that's where my kitchen is. I believe only the dry kitchen. I don't really want to have a wet kitchen. So out here there's a balcony, the kitchen balcony. They actually also bring you to see the park at the back, and it's facing west. But I like this deck because it's pretty much you captured the sunset even for at 7 o'clock or whatever. Then I can enjoy the sunset lah. Then walking along here, it is the dry kitchen. The bench that the other side of the dry kitchen, and this is the dining area. And I have a guest room here. The light's supposed to be on. I think make a mistake. They didn't turn on all the light, but never mind. Min, you still recollect this place?
I remember your dining room because the last time I was there was food in that room.
And then there's a step that going up. but you know, for me, the air moved right through.
Oh, how are the stairs supported?
And this important experiment.
There you go. How is it supported? Okay, he's showing us.
It says this is a family area up the top. Then I have this what do you call, like, all the light can shine on top and bottom, right? And all the lights are supposed to be on, but he forgot to put on the light. But this is the study area. It's supposed to be also a yoga area, and it's the one that you see the car park just now. Is actually, that is this is like a sort of like a protrusion over the car park. I don't believe in garages.
Do you have a flyer to show?
On the left is my daughter's room. Now she's in the most exciting part of the world, Los Angeles. So you will come back, but we have to make sure the room is ready for her lah. So the other room is my son's room, and this room become like a meditative place if you were to go up the law. It's just an open deck. In fact, and one interesting point is that in fact, this is actually asked by him when he was young. He was like standard 6, 12 years old. When he come to the site with me. Then this is another area that is the balcony outside. So balcony outside is actually have this large roof that you saw just now on the perspective. It's pretty much like umbrella, section of umbrella that when it rains, it becomes like a water curtain like that. Then looking down, it also relate to the just now the deck I was talking about, the kitchen deck. And now I'm taking you to my master bedroom. So my master bedroom is a very open concept. So it is, you can actually look out. The air, the rain, if it's rain horizontally, the rain can come in. But rain is not poisonous, so I actually enjoy the aspect of it. And you turn around, you actually see right through also. It's very open. The idea was that I try anything closing down. Even I don't have a door frame, so that the space would feel that it's floating right through. So the what do you call, the door is actually tucked away with what do you call, with the pivoted corner or something like that. And this is my master bedroom. So every photographer in this house has seen. Yesterday I'm exactly here for the Mooncake Festival. It marked by 17 years in this house. So time really flies. So every photographer or every student, they must come to this corner to take this leaf-shaped roof, or so to speak. And all my door are actually Meranti. And this is a lesser wood, but it become more expensive now. Look like American love it too much. I hope that they don't love it so much. To leave some for Malaysian to use. And it's like a bench with a basin. And this chair is very important. Like, look like a bit like a semi-tree house like that. The whole idea was bottom there also. I believe in tropical thing. There's no window, nothing. The air will move right through 24/7. And this is actually the size of my body. So if my wife don't allow me to go to the master bedroom, at least I got some place to sleep. That never happened. Kedahan understand the joke. So now I'm going to quickly take you down to the swimming pool, and then we can conclude the tour. So just now we are coming from the outside, but just now we already going in the in-between stairs, right? So so a lot of the time, this area is like my studio area, that the student or my contractor or whoever that come, this is where they will be stationed. So I will quickly go out to the outside to show you that it sort of like explain the house better structurally. This is my tiang seri, right? This tiang seri basically the center of the garden. Going up, this is another place that people come. All right, so they do, like, you know, the whole idea was that it's a starting point of the construction is actually at this point, right? So, and then the three dogs, and this is Foxy. It's actually they about. This is the pool area. The pool is basically only a lap pool, but it is done in such a way that it's more like swimming the river rather than having those tiles that make it feel like a very clinical pool. Yeah. So from this area here, also right next to it is where I work. Then what it does is that actually, you know, the water like sort of pretending like a moat like that, it can go inside in between the building. I must confess, seldom swim this day. So okay, I think that's probably about it. I'm going to go to my room now. So from there, you walk in, and then this few dogs sort of like won't leave me alone one, you know. Hachiko, Foxy, and this is Simi. So this is my room. Now we have listened to the echo already. I'm going to leave this.
Can you hear us, Lok Kuang?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Us, okay, so look, thank you very much. You did very well. We thought, for someone who just found out yesterday that you had to do a tour of online. You thought you were going to speak for 45 minutes. You need to turn on your audio. You're muted.
I said, sorry, you have to listen to me reprimanding my mate. He's supposed to switch off everything prepared, and then he forgot. But never mind.
I thought you were scolding your dogs. Okay, so never mind. So no, you did very well. You did very well for someone who found out just yesterday that you had to do a tour. So well done. If I were to just improve it next time, I would do this. I would make sure that you put on earpiece so that you can hear us when you're walking around.
Oh yeah.
Because there were questions that we were wanting to ask as well. But all in all, I think well done. For
Thank you.
For the next one,
maybe we already.
Okay. We'll send you a care package. Okay. So are there any other closing statements from my guest and the speaker?
I think thanks a lot, Lok Kuang. I think this is pretty much eye-opening, and I think you open up another dimensions of architecture where your deep involvement as well as your engagement to the architecture. I think congratulations, and I hope to see more great job from you.
I'll do my best, but this is what I enjoy. Yeah. I think I just want to congratulate Pam, Sarawak chapter. I think you're all doing very well. Make us look bad, but it's good. Then we improve.
Yes. Okay. Now, thanks, Lok Kuang. Next week, if you can tune in, next week same time, 5 o'clock Friday, we have a speaker from Jakarta. Raphael from Jakarta, he was also told this morning that he has to do a tour. So he's going to give us a tour of a newly completed clubhouse very near his house.
It's interesting.
The company is called Aboday, Aboday. It's quite a young firm, but they have quite a diverse range of work and work in progress as well. So to the audience, please log in. We'll put up the...
I will do that. We'll do that.
Okay. So we'll see you again. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My pleasure.